This episode of RWBY marks an important milestone as it is the 100th episode in the series, if you don't count the character shorts. Because of that, it could put the pacing into perspective, and yeah, RWBY's pacing has been really inconsistent actually. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. This is my review for RWBY Volume 8, Episode 8. If you haven't seen the episode yet, you may want to before watching this review. Alright, so this episode was fine, but I'm going to start with my biggest complaint. While the attempt at horror was admirable, it didn't really work. And it didn't really work for the same reason that every action horror hybrid doesn't actually work. Fear comes from powerlessness. It comes from the feeling that you can't escape or that you can't win through conventional means. And when you give characters powerful weapons or superhuman abilities, it becomes exponentially harder to capture genuine fear for the characters. The apathy in Volume 6 circumvented this problem by making them a psychological threat. The Hound tries to circumvent this problem by being so much stronger than any of the other heroes, but the result is that it just turns the Hound into a bullet sponge. But at the end of the day, one silver-eyed blast and one tossed over statue was enough to kill it. I like the fight in the implication of Salem turning heroes into monsters and how the Hound was a silver-eyed faunus, which puts a nice little bow on the moment Blake and RWBY shared earlier in the episode. While I loathe the possibility of Summer or Pyrrha coming back, it only counts if their revival lowers the stakes. Adding Summer to the hero roster would be shitty and stupid. Bringing her in as a mutated grim monstrosity that RWBY is forced to kill would be cool and interesting. I adored this scene with RWBY and Blake. It's a contender for my favorite scene in the volume. It's the pep talk RWBY needs coming from the one person on her team who at one point tried running away from her problems. It's not enough to get Blake off the shit list, but she's doing way better than Yang at this point. Speaking of which, it's really cool that Blake and RWBY have an actual conversation where they talk about emotions and feelings and all that stuff these two characters have never talked about together before, and Yang isn't even mentioned. Is Miles Luna actually a better writer than Eddie Rivas? Because comparing Blake in this episode to Yang in episode 4 is making me think that Miles is better than Eddie. The first scene in the prison was confusedly cobbled together and poorly edited. But then Cinder and Watts come face to face in the other scene, and I remembered that I actually like the fact that they have nothing but contempt for each other. And oh yeah, Whitley saved the day through the greatest power of all. Money. I had almost forgotten that Whitley, unlike Weiss, actually has the credentials to use any and all resources owned by the Schnees, and unlike Jacques, has the empathy to use them. If Ironwood had his way and seized the means of Schnee's production, Whitley wouldn't have access to the ships and drones needed to evacuate the crater. Another win for private ownership. The stuff with Penny and Nora worked fine, the fight between Blake and the Alpha Sentinel was alright. And overall, this was a contender for the best episode of the volume. Even where it faltered, it did so because it was trying to do something that's extremely difficult for even the most talented of writers. And I'm really starting to get my hopes up that this might be the best volume yet. I'm Mediocrity4, thanks for watching.